Well, good morning, coasters. It's Bruce here. It's the 3rd of July. Now, I've been asked by a number of journalists to comment on the proposed three water changes. I haven't done so at this stage, and it's because there's a lot to it, and I needed time to explain my views in a slow manner. This is my journey for Three Waters so far as Mayor of Westland District. Government decides that clean water is a priority for every New Zealander. Now that's a government decision. Government starts by legislating a water regulator and makes it mandatory to enforce the standard that government has decided on for the supply of drinking water. So that's the standard, what the quality of the water will be. It's basing its decisions on a Scottish water model. This is where I saw the first crack appear. The regulator must ensure that all users of water get the same treatment across New Zealand. It's again a one-size-fits-all for everybody that uses water, no matter whether you're rain-fed or whether you draw your water from the aquifer. Very, very different models in my view, coasters. The question is, what will it cost ratepayers? And that's never been considered as a priority. In fact, to this day, we still haven't really discussed it. Can New Zealand afford a gold-plated water management regime? Be the first question that I would have asked. Would a bronze or a silver plate model have been a better first step? The regulator has already indicated that he has the power of enforcement and he will use it. What does that mean? Some months back, government announced a one-off payment with no strings attached, costing $740 million across New Zealand to stimulate the economy during the COVID recovery. All the councils had to do was supply government with a full analysis of its current Three Waters assets and programs. And council had to agree to spend the money on Three Water assets. Now in Westland we received more than Grey and Buller because of the percentage of stewardship land in Westland, an acknowledgement from government of the inequity of our rating base caused by non-rated DOC controlled land. That's 87% of all the land in Westland. A further carrot was dangled and it was described as Tranche 2. That would go to the councils who decided to join the master plan for centralising control of water. At that time, one concept being promoted was a number of companies supplying all of the water in New Zealand, and they would get ownership of all of the council's Three Water assets. At the 3rd of July, the Tranche 2 payment seems to have disappeared, or it's gone to ground. Don't know why. So all councils had to do was to supply the information to DIA. There were very tight timeframes for the supply of information, and staff around the country worked over Christmas of 2020 and January of 2021 in order to meet the timelines. Then came a series of rushed meetings. The key message from government's PR team was, "We have proven the case for change." PR spin at its very best. At every meeting I've attended, the only thing raised was a key PR message, and they kept saying, "We have proven the case for change." Many of the mayors said, You have not proven the case for change. In fact, far from it. A number of mayors sought to raise questions or concerns, and the standard answer from DIA was, well, we can't answer that because it's before Cabinet at present. Okay. From day one, government's position was that participation in this model was optional, and every council took government at its word, as we do here on the coast. Discussions took place around the country on if the assets owned by councils were transferred, how many entities would there be? How would they be governed? Where were iwi in the discussions? And how did they fit into the ultimate structure? What would the balance sheet implications be, and the moves made impact on the future of local government in New Zealand? I note that the RMA draft plans that have come out talk about 14 separate regional plans. There's a whisper that floats around that says there will only be 14 councils left in the country after this review is completed. Government then advised councils the 3 water assets owned by each council would be transferred into one of these operating entities. Council would receive cash to retire any debt that it had on its 3 water assets, and its remaining assets, that's 3 water assets, would be transferred with no compensation. Government maintains that councils would still own the assets via some sort of joint ownership of the 3 water entities. However, there'll be no shareholding. There will be total balance sheet separation, and the new entities would then borrow up to 160 billion to fund their activities using the 3 waters assets transferred from councils as security. A concern? Yeah, I think so. That's more than the total government debt at present. So we're talking huge figures. Let's talk about Westland District, as it's the one I know the most about. About $120 million of 3 waters assets built up over the last 100 years by our ratepayers. The balance sheet impact with the removal of its 3 water assets for the Westland District Council would be that the assets are taken and $7 million of debt repaid to Westland District Council. And the proposal is we would write the rest off. That's a balance sheet write-off of $113 million for Westland ratepayers. The write-off of those assets paid for by our pioneers and past generations. They've come out and said there'll be 4 entities, and that covers in the South Island the Ngāi Tahu Takiwai, with Nelson and Marlborough specifically excluded. There'll be 3 water supply entities in the North Island. Government's proposed governance structure takes all of the decisions in relation to 3 waters away from councils and its ratepayers. Takes it all away. The ratepayers, or the water users, will be billed directly from the Water Authority. And the key message from government and the government PR team remains: we have proven the case for change. Then last Thursday, the mayors were given access to each district's figures by DIA. What is clear is that every New Zealander will pay heavily for a gold-plated water standard decided by government where affordability has not been discussed. The government structure has been proposed as being controlled 50% by councils who have put in 100% of the assets and controlled 50% by iwi. An unusual situation, to say the least. Government has proposed that the 4 water companies will be up and running by July the 1st, 2024. As I said at the beginning, the proposed reshaping is based on the Scottish model. So here we are now, July the 3rd, 2021, on a beautiful coast day. Started off at -2 this morning. It's up around 0 at the moment, which is quite good. Now, there's been no consideration at all of other options or the risks of this proposal to a system that has worked, albeit not perfectly, but it's worked well for decades. There has been no consideration about how our New Zealand districts will feel about their hard-earned assets being taken by government without compensation and then heavily mortgaged. I want to move now to the unwise attempts by the government to influence the outcome of this discussion by spending $3.5 million on those ridiculous ads that would have been better aimed at our kindergartens. The mayors collectively wrote to Minister Mahuta asking her to withdraw the ads, which were considered inaccurate and insulting. And the answer was a firm no. Let's have a look at the advertisement.
Without good water, what a stink-ass place that would be. Trout would be grumpy, boating no fun, and dirty ducks a sad sight to see. Mean-as manus wouldn't be mean. Showers a complete waste of time. Bathrooms would be just rooms. Togs just undies. And our awa all filthy with slime. That's why we've got a plan, because we're water's biggest fan. So let's make it better than fine. Better water is better for everyone.
The discussion is about drinking water in the first instance. However, in the ad, the assumption is we don't have good water. And that's simply not correct in most parts of New Zealand. The imported trout will be a grumpy, sad sight to see, the ad says. I say catch him and cook him. He was never meant to be here in the first place. Up until now, this entire proposal has focused on clean drinking water. Where do dirty ducks and imported trout come from? Manu won't be clean. What on earth does that mean in the context of this discussion? Unable to have a shower? Really? What part of New Zealand are they talking about? Really? Clearly it's not the West Coast. And this type of nonsense is not even okay to feed into our kindergartens. The $3 million would have been better deployed to pay redundancy to that ever-growing public relation team that works for the government. Now let's look at the information for each district, just released by DIA, and it's available on their website. Government says that in Bulla, the current cost of Three Waters is $1,620 per annum. Bulla's average rate is $1,815. That's total rate. See where I'm coming from? Government says with the reform, the cost to each Bulla water user will be $16 $1,240. And they say that if the reform doesn't go ahead, the cost to each Buller user will be $8,698 per year. Now we move on to the Grey District, where the government says of the current cost of Three Waters, it's $1,160 per user per annum. With reform, the Three Waters cost will rise to $1,640, identical to Buller. And with no reform, the government says the cost will be the same as Buller at $8,690 per annum per user. And then we move to Westland, where government says the current cost of Three Waters is $2,140 per year per user. Note the average rate is $3,030. With reform, the bill from the water regulator will be the same as Buller and Grey, $1,640. With no reform, after going through all of the numbers, guess what? It's $8,690. That's $8,690 per user per annum. Now that's the same as Buller and Grey districts. Are you confused? I'm not surprised. My take at present is the bar has been set far too high by government for the regulator, and New Zealand won't be able to afford it. In reality, it'll add $160 billion to the country's debt, which is more than the government's current net debt. God only knows what will happen when interest rates rise, which they will. There's been a concentrated effort to sell the positive of this scheme, with no effort to establish and discuss the risks and the increases in water charges that will arise and how people will pay for them. The ratepayers of each district on the coast will struggle with the concept of having their water assets taken and being billed with large increases from the water regulator. Bills they will have no control over, where at present elections bring about the ultimate accountability. So here's where I see it at present. Nothing has been put to our council seeking any form of decision at this time. I doubt if I'll be able to put my hand on my heart and try to sell this proposal to my councillors, but more importantly to our coast community, as you are the owners of the assets, and it's you who will pay the increased costs via the bills you receive from the water regulator. I hope this has helped. It is confusing, and I've got an open mind, but I am concerned. Catch you later.